Alright, so let's talk about No Time to Die. So I've just come back from seeing the film for a second time, and I've had time to process it because there is a lot to process with this one. And, well, I really like it. I have to admit, I really, really do. Obviously, because this is a film that's been pushed back and better pushed back, and also when it was in production, there'd been talk. It seemed as though there was one problem after another with this thing. So it always makes you nervous. Obviously, it started with Danny Boyle being attached to this project originally, and then he walked away, and then Kerry Fukunaga came on. So I was nervous going into this, and obviously, you maybe you could criticize some of the marketing. It got a lot of people very nervous. Um, but I have to say, any kind of fears of this again, well, you're going to use the W word, walk, you know, this film isn't walk at all. Don't let anyone tell you any different. This film is a true blue Bond movie. And what's nice about it is there's a really nice blend of what we've seen in the newer Bond films, this whole new beast that the franchise produced, but they've also paired that with a lot of the traditional, the older aspects of Bonds that we've come to know and love. So it's a really nice blend of old and new, I feel. Um, it's no secret, Daniel Craig's never been my Bond, but he does a mighty fine job, and you can't deny over the years the effort that he's put into it, and he's worked so hard, and he does a phenomenal job in this. Hats off to him. He does a brilliant, brilliant job. And also, he does a really good job. I feel that they did a gear shift with Skyfall, where they decided, okay, we're going to start getting back to classic Bond. And obviously that progressed through Spectre, and it carries on here, and it really, he really feels like Bond. But obviously, each of the Bond actors, they bring something different to the character. And obviously, with Daniel Craig, you have this tremendous physicality that he brings to the role, and obviously that's on full display here. His action sequences are absolutely first class. And obviously, you see him get hurt. When you contrast with Roger Moore, who was able to just brush things off, and he was able to just get off, and it looked immaculate. It didn't phase him, completely unfazed. And then even Pierce Brosnan, in a lot of ways, he just, these guys just never got dirty, they never got hurt, and they just walked it off. Whereas obviously the thing with Daniel Craig, you see his Bond get hurt, and you see, him having to deal with it. Um, Similar with what you got with Timothy Dalton. Of course, obviously Dalton and Craig are often compared, much darker iterations of the character with a harder edge, and obviously much more vulnerable. And we see these guys get hurt. Obviously, Timothy Dalton's in a really bad way at the end of License to Kill. And obviously, Daniel Craig, we've constantly seen him get roughed up. And, he runs the gauntlet in this one as well. Um, but it's interesting. It's a really interesting premise, the idea of Bond coming out of retirement. Obviously, we are going to get into spoilers, so basically, the plot points of this film, you got Remy Malek as Safin, who's our villain, and he's basically dealing in. It's the new age, obviously, what's the next. How are we going to fight the next war, or how do we win the war before it ever starts? So it's all to do with weaponizing DNA, targeting individuals um, through via DNA databases. and poisoning them. So obviously you'll never even have to pull the gun on someone, you can just boom. And it goes to that line he has in the trailer of eradicating people in a tidier manner. It's Brave New World, or Scary New World if you prefer. So it's all to do with DNA and weaponizing DNA. And obviously they have another line that's has been used in the market, and obviously you infect enough people and then the people themselves become the virus and they'll spread it on to the loved ones and then to the wider population. So high stakes, of course. And one of the things that a lot of people who have loved what Daniel Craig's tenure has been, they've always felt, because the stories have been a lot more personal, and a lot more interlinked and connected. People have just wanted a mission. Let's see Daniel Craig's Bond save the world at least once, because a lot of it's been lower stakes, more personal stuff, which is, again, and you can't criticize them for that really, because obviously after 60 years, we've got to keep trying different things and experimenting, and what hasn't been done with Bond, and going down a more personal route, and uh, having the films connect, you know, rather than being standalone missions where you could just watch one. You wouldn't necessarily have to see the subsequent film. You wouldn't necessarily have had to have seen um, the previous film. But this one, yeah, it delivers that wish for let's see Bond on a mission and let's see him save the world. We've got to talk as well. Obviously, Bond's retired by this point, and but obviously he's living life with Madeline, who of course they met and drove off into the sunset together at the end of Spectre. But obviously the past comes back to haunt them. It's revealed that Safin, Remy Malek's character, has a history with Madeline Swan, Leah Sedu's character, and obviously he's, after all these years, he's come back out the woodwork, and we go from there. But the obviously as well, it's a long film, 2 hours 40 minutes, but for me, it didn't feel it. I appreciate, your mileage may vary, but this thing moved. This thing really, really moved. And again, there's so many fantastic set pieces. Obviously, you have the whole set piece with Anna de Armas as Paloma. She's fantastic. She's an absolute delight. And she, again, limited screen time, as we assumed might be the case from the marketing, but she makes the most of it. She's a really, really memorable character. A lot of reviews have been given a, really high praise. Some going so far as saying she's the best thing about the movie. I don't necessarily know if that's fair, but it's, if that's what they feel, I can understand. Because she really is. I wouldn't necessarily say she's the best thing about the film, but she's one of the high points, certainly. She's one of the bright points. And again, so wonderful, so charming. She's, so bubbly, and but then obviously when the chips are down, she can handle herself. Um, Lashana Lynch, of course, everyone was nervous about her. Obviously, she is the new 007, and again, I don't dislike the character, but it felt as though, in there are parts of the film where she does have a lot of snarkiness towards Bond, and it does start to wear thin. But then, when it wears thin, they start to, branch off, move away from that. They actually, have her be civil to Bond. Eventually, we get there as we get in the second half of the film. The dynamic of the relationship changes, and you can kind of like take a breath, thinking, "Thank God, I don't know how much more of her snarkiness I could take." But yeah, again, I don't think, again, certainly not a bad character by any means, and certainly not as worrisome as the trailers or some of the marketing would have you believe. And it's okay. She doesn't hog the spotlight by any means. She doesn't have a great deal of screen time, really. Bond is still the main character. It's still Bond's movie, as you would hope would be the case. Um, but yeah, there's so much good stuff in here, and obviously everyone on the MI6 side of things. Obviously, Ray Fiennes is fantastic as M. Rory Kinnear, of course, as Tanner. Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. Ben Whishaw as Q. They're a great unit. They all work so well together and have such a fantastic chemistry with Daniel Craig. You love to see these guys together. I gotta say though, as well, Leia Sadu in terms of characters. Madeline Swan was a character when she was introduced in Spectre. I just the character didn't work for me. There was nothing really. Whereas in this film, she's much better. They really improve that character. I think I would go so far as to say it's night and day the difference. She is so much better in this film than she was in Spectre. So yeah, a character that really benefited from being brought back for a sequel. Yeah, Leah Sedu's character Madeline Swan, much better and much more likable in this film than she was in Spectre. Of course, yeah, Remy Malek does a fine job as Safin. He is. He captures that classic Bond villain, but then also they do amp up that horror vibe. I think to a certain extent, the opening sequence is shot almost like a horror film. Very effective. So the opening sequence was certainly a highlight, which is set back in the past when Madeline was still only very young at the time. It shows you how the encounter between her and Safin went down, and then obviously we jump to the present and go from there. But again, the action in this is fantastic, and the story is great with that world-ending threat that we were hoping to see. Daniel Craig, it's easy to see why he wanted to come back and give it one last go, because it's clear that he wasn't happy with Spectre. Um, but yeah, it's this, you know, you look at some of the other Bond channels like David Zuritskin and Joe Darlington, their channels, and they've obviously been talking about, the curse of the final film. Often the final film of each Bond actor is their worst film. Obviously, Diamonds Are Forever, for example, was Sean, and you know, I think this breaks the curse. Although I would say License to Kill for Timothy Dalton broke the curse. But yeah, this is another one. This one, No Time to Die. This is a great way to go out. This for me, there's always that knee jerk reaction. I don't know if I can say with certainty that it's my favourite of Craig's, because obviously the novelties that I need to sit on it for a while, but I do really, really like this film. Um, Hans Zimmer's music score is phenomenal, and this talks into one of the final wrap up point that I wanted to discuss. There are some really fantastic callbacks to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby's film. It's clear that the people who made this film are absolutely fans of On Her Majesty's. Hans Zimmer, with the use of the music, they actually do use Louis Armstrong's "We Have All the Time in the World" in the end credits. But in terms of the instrumental motif that obviously they used as basically the love theme between Bond and Tracy in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, they bring it back for this, and it packs an emotional punch. Yeah, it's phenomenal, and that for me, This movie's given me a whole new love and appreciation for Honor Majesties. I mean, when I got back from seeing it yesterday, the first thing I did when I got home, I watched Honor Majesty's Secret Service. And going back tonight and watching No Time to Die for a second time, I think Honor Majesty's and No Time to Die they would be a wonderful, their partnership there. They're a perfect combination, I think. Like if you were gonna go see this and you were gonna take someone who hasn't really seen any of the Bond films, I'd say watch Skyfall and watch Spectre, but then watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service as well. So those three films, if you have time, and then go in to see this one, because there's so many emotional and thematic elements that they borrow or homage from On Her Majesty's. It's a powerful thing, and I think if you've seen On Her Majesty's, it'll impact your viewing of this one. Yeah, this really really well done, and obviously an emotional farewell to Daniel Craig. But again, all I can say is well done, well done. Um, Everyone clearly was trying the hardest. It's clearly made by, well, obviously Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. It's it's in their family, this franchise. But Cary Fukunaga, of course, it's clear that he's a fan. You know, but again, I really really liked this one. Really did, really pleased with it, and it is a great concluding chapter for Daniel Craig. And what I will say is, you know, it's interesting though, because obviously some of the reviews have been negative, even though it's been overwhelmingly positive. But, I think it might be fair that it will polarize people. But that's fine, it's just, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this film sits with people. Obviously, it's yet to open in America. So it's going to be interesting to see how that lands with American audiences. And obviously, as time goes on, and obviously when it comes out on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital, when people are able to go back and re-watch it, to see basically see how this film ages. Well, that'll be the true test. But I really loved it, and obviously the response overwhelmingly so far has been positive. But it's going to be interesting to see how opinion changes over time, or if it matures and just gets stronger and stronger over time. But again, that pretty much brings us to a close. But it's got, you know, everything really. It's got a fantastic story. The characters are all firing on all cylinders. Great locations. Obviously, bringing Jeffrey Wright back as Felix. He was having fun. Great to see Jeffrey Wright back. I think he might be my favourite Felix. It's between him and Bernie Casey from Never Say Never Again. They're both great. But yeah, it's got obviously great locations and great music score by Hans Zimmer. He did fantastic with this. And the only thing is, Hans Zimmer being Hans Zimmer, it might just be a one time deal, but that's, at least we got it. But yeah, great send off for Daniel Craig. But it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here. You know, but it's gonna be a while, so obviously they'll be planning it and better planning it. So just gotta watch this space. But that pretty much brings us to a close. No Time to Die. Really really pleased with it. But please, of course, feel free to share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. And again, it's just, this is clearly, or it's looking to be the film that will, you know, revitalize the box office. The way it's been selling, tickets have been, well, most of the screenings have been sold out or pretty much sold out, so it's a really positive sign. So the interest's obviously there. So hopefully, this will get us back. We hoped it would be Tenet last year, didn't go so well, and obviously we're getting there. Obviously, Fast Nine was successful, made a lot of money. Shang-Chi's doing well, but not as well as your typical Marvel movie. So we'll see. This is getting off to a good start. Obviously, we've got Dune next later this month. So I think between the 1-2 punch, of No Time to Die, Dune, and then obviously in December we've got Spider-Man 3. Things are looking up. So anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble. Please feel free to share your thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed the vid. Thank you for bearing with me, and I will see you all next time. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.